My girlfriend, Emma, recently decided to take a break to travel through Asia with her old college friends. As a result, I made the difficult decision to call off our wedding. Emma and I had been together for about 5 years, engaged for nearly 3. We were planning our future, and things seemed on track. We had a wedding date. Everything was booked, and I genuinely believed we were on the same page. But about 6 weeks ago, she told me she was going on a trip to Asia with her college friends. She described it as a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Although it was a bit sudden, I didn't want to hold her back from making memories with her friends. So, I supported her decision, even driving her to the airport. I helped her with her bags, kissed her goodbye, and wished her a fun trip. As we approached the security line, though, she dropped a bombshell. She told me we needed to take a break. This wasn't some long, heartfelt conversation where we discussed what was on her mind. She said it casually, almost like it was no big deal, right before she walked into the security line. I stood there, stunned. "What do you mean, a break?" I wanted to ask, but before I could respond, she was off, waving goodbye as if nothing had happened. I was left standing there, unsure what just happened. On the drive home, I convinced myself that maybe it was just nerves about the trip. I tried calling her later that night, just to check in, but found that I was blocked on everything. I couldn't call her, text her, or see anything she posted on social media. She had cut off all communication. That's when it sank in. She didn't mean a break as a passing comment. She had truly decided to cut me off without any explanation. For the next 5 days, I waited, hoping she would calm down and maybe realize how extreme her actions were. But after 5 days of absolute silence, I knew I was done. I didn't want to be with someone who thought it was okay to just walk away whenever things felt a little too serious. So, I made my decision. I called off the wedding, canceled the venue, catering, and everything else we had planned. I went a step further, too. We'd planned for Emma to move in with me in March, but after all this, that wasn't going to happen. She could figure out her own living situation when she got back. I was moving on. Weeks passed without a word from her. No messages, no calls, nothing. Then, one day, she called me out of the blue. I didn't even recognize the number, so she must have used a different phone. She casually mentioned her flight details, as if I'd be waiting at the airport to pick her up. I paused and simply replied, "What's that got to do with me?" The silence that followed was priceless. She seemed shocked, caught off guard by my reaction, but I didn't give her a chance to explain. I blocked her just as she had done to me, effectively ending it on my terms. Afterward, I decided it was time to let people know the wedding was off. We had a group chat with friends and family, so I posted a brief message. "Hey, just letting everyone know the wedding is canceled. And so, is our relationship?" I didn't expect it to get much reaction, but the response was overwhelming. Everyone wanted to know what had happened. So, I told them everything. How Emma left for Asia, declared a break out of nowhere, and blocked me for 6 weeks. People were shocked, and some were even angry on my behalf, which felt oddly comforting. Around 2 p.m. that same day, Emma tried to reach out again. She just asked me to call her so we could talk privately. But I wasn't interested. I told her we could discuss things in the group chat if she wanted to explain herself. She didn't like that and said this was a private matter between us, not something for everyone to see. I disagreed. She made it public the moment she walked away without a word. Throughout the day, she kept trying to get me to talk, but I was done. By 6 p.m., she was begging me to pick her up from the airport so we could talk in person. But I wasn't about to play along. She had made her choice, and I had made mine. After this, I focused on getting my life back on track. I went through our shared accounts, ensured everything was separated, and changed the locks on my apartment. I didn't want to risk her showing up unannounced, thinking she could just walk back into my life after what she'd put me through. In the meantime, I even started planning my own trips. If she could go off to Asia for 6 weeks, I figured I deserved a break too. Then, Just as I thought it was all behind me, one of our mutual friends, Chloe, reached out. Chloe has always been honest with me, and she hesitated to get involved this time. But she sent me a screenshot of a group chat I wasn't a part of, one where Emma was explaining her side of things to some of her friends. In the messages, Emma was painting me as the one who overreacted. She told them how she was stressed about the wedding and needed some space to clear her head. She even wrote, "I didn't mean for the break to last that long, but I thought he would understand." The most infuriating part was that she said she needed time to decide if she was ready for marriage, but I canceled everything before she had the chance to talk to me. Reading that made my blood boil. She had blocked me for 6 weeks without warning, and now she was trying to make me look like the one who rushed to end things. It's hard to believe someone I loved for 5 years could turn around and do this. But as I read her words, I felt like I had made the right choice. When Emma started spreading her side of the story, twisting things to make me look like the villain, I knew I couldn't let her narrative stand. So, I chose to address it directly. I went to our main group chat, a space filled with close friends and family who were all still buzzing from the news of the wedding cancellation. Everyone was in the dark, trying to figure out what had gone wrong, and it felt like the right time to set the record straight. I wrote a message saying, "Look, I just want everyone to know the truth here. Emma decided we were taking a break without talking to me. She blocked me for 6 weeks, and now she's acting like this is some sort of miscommunication. I canceled the wedding because I wasn't going to sit around waiting for someone who couldn't respect me enough to even have a conversation. You can't just announce a break, disappear for weeks, then expect everything to be fine when you come back. That's not how relationships work." There was a pause in the chat, and then one person finally spoke up, agreeing with me. I felt relieved that someone else was saying it, because I was tired of constantly defending myself. But then things took a twist. Jessica, a friend of Emma's whom I'd always felt was a bit shady, jumped in to defend her. Jessica claimed that Emma had been through a lot, implying that the stress of planning the wedding had impacted her judgment. She acted as if she understood the inner workings of our relationship, even trying to give me advice on how I should handle it. I couldn't stay quiet. I replied, "Jessica, with all due respect, you don't know half of it. This isn't about wedding stress. It's about Emma blocking me, cutting me off, and refusing to communicate during her entire trip. I called, texted, and got nothing back. How long was I supposed to wait? Another 6 weeks? A year? If Emma didn't want to be with me, she could have just said so. But instead, she disappeared and expected things to be fine when she came back." Jessica doubled down, asking why I had canceled the wedding without talking to Emma first. I was stunned to see Rachel, Emma's sister, backing Jessica up, even though I'd already confided in her. Rachel said, "Emma was heartbroken. You should have waited until she was ready to talk." But I pushed back, reminding her that Emma had blocked me. How could I talk to her when she literally cut off all contact? Rachel couldn't answer that, but she kept suggesting that I should have given it more time. Frustrated, I finally said, "Look, I'm done with this." I was exhausted from the constant back and forth and didn't see the point in defending myself any further. A little later, Emma reached out to me, but her apology was half-hearted at best. She said she was sorry for how things went down, but she didn't take real responsibility for her actions. It was one of those apologies that sounds mutual, as if we both played a part. I didn't respond. I felt there was no point. She'd made her choices, and she would have to live with them. To avoid more drama, I blocked her again on every platform. I thought that would be the end of it, at least for a while. But about a week later, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I nearly ignored it, but something compelled me to answer. To my surprise, it was Emma's mom, Chloe. She started off by trying to make me feel guilty, saying, "We were all looking forward to the wedding, and this has devastated Emma. You know she's been crying every day since she got back, right?" But I wasn't going to let Chloe make me feel bad. I told her calmly, "Chloe, I'm sorry Emma's upset, but she made her choices. If she was having doubts, she should have come to me, not blocked me out. Chloe didn't stop there. She reminded me of the years we'd spent together, asking if I didn't want to try and save the relationship. She even suggested that we meet for a family dinner, as if this whole situation could be patched up over a meal. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Politely but firmly, I told her, "Thank you for the offer, but I think it's best if we all move on," and ended the call. I thought that would finally be the last of it, but the very next day, I got a message from Emma's dad, Jerry. He's one of those old-school types who's convinced he's always right. He never seemed to take my perspective into account, and I knew a response would just lead to an argument, so I left it unanswered. Just when I thought things were quieting down, Emma found a way to reach out again, this time from a different number. Her message was long and emotional, filled with paragraphs where she expressed regret for how things had unfolded. She insisted that she hadn't meant to hurt me and admitted she'd made a mistake, explaining that she'd felt overwhelmed and confused. A small part of me felt a tinge of sadness. After all, we'd spent years together, and I hadn't imagined it ending this way. But most of me was still furious. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much this entire situation had affected me. It wasn't what I wanted or expected, but after everything that had happened, I was finally certain it was time to let go. Emma had broken my trust in a way that felt impossible to mend. No matter how many times she apologized or tried to explain, I couldn't let go of what she'd done. You might assume that blocking Emma and her family would finally bring me peace. But things didn't settle as easily as I hoped. Emma and her family seemed unable to accept that the wedding was off, and instead, they kept bombarding me from every angle, as though they could wear me down. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. A couple of days after Emma's last attempt to reach out, I received a text from someone else, Jane. I took a deep breath, trying to clear my mind and approach things calmly, one day at a time. When I read her message, though, I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Jane dropped the line, "I think you should hear Emma out. Here we go again." I stared at my phone, unsure if I should even respond. A part of me wanted to block Jane too, but curiosity won out. I decided to see where the conversation would go. I asked Jane why she felt I should give Emma another chance. Jane insisted that Emma was heartbroken and never intended to hurt me. But the more Jane talked, the more obvious it became that Emma had sent her to act as a go-between. Emma was hoping I'd be more receptive to Jane than to her. This made it even clearer that Emma didn't have the courage to confront me herself. I was beyond done with this back and forth. I told Jane I appreciate her concern, but that a few apologies wouldn't resolve the damage that had been done. It was over. Simple as that. Jane tried to keep arguing, but I didn't give her a chance. I ended the conversation and blocked her too. Later that week, Jack reached out, asking to meet for coffee. When I arrived at the cafe, he was already there, looking a bit uneasy. We started with some awkward small talk before he finally got to the point. He admitted he knew the situation with Emma had been a mess, but wanted to see if there was any chance we could work things out. I almost laughed at the suggestion. "Jack, it's over. There's nothing left to fix. She made her choices and I've made mine," I said, keeping my tone as steady as possible. Jack shifted in his seat, uncomfortable, clearly trying to find the right words. "But what if she's serious about making things right?" he said. "She's been talking about wanting to make it up to you." I shook my head. "Jack, I appreciate you trying to help, but it's not going to happen. If Emma wants to move on, that's fine. But I'm not interested in picking up where we left off." We sat there in tense silence for a few moments, both realizing the conversation was going nowhere. Eventually, Jack shrugged and said he understood. Not long after, I got a call from Emma's aunt. When I saw her name pop up on my screen, I braced myself for another unwanted plea. She started off by saying she'd heard about the breakup and wanted to check in on me. At this point, I was over it. So I got straight to the point. "Did Emma send you?" I asked bluntly. Her response was evasive. "Well, not exactly, but she's really struggling." I thought maybe I could help mediate things between you two. I was so frustrated, I nearly threw my phone. That was it. No more conversations. No more explanations. No more letting anyone drag me back into the toxic mess of Emma's life. I was done. This time for real. After that, things finally started to quiet down. No more texts, no more calls. No more family members reaching out to guilt me into reconciling with Emma. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could finally breathe, without the weight of her drama hanging over me. But just as I was beginning to feel free, about a month after everything went down, I received a letter in the mail, an actual letter, as if we were living in the 1900s. At first, I almost threw it away. Who even sends letters anymore? But the handwriting was familiar, so I decided to open it. The letter took me by surprise. Not only was it an apology, but it outlined a plan for how we could start fresh. Emma talked about discussing couples counseling with her mom and suggested we meet up to talk things through. I couldn't believe the audacity. She hadn't even asked if I was interested or checked in with me. She'd simply assumed I'd go along with it. I was furious. After everything, Emma still didn't understand. She was trying to control the situation, hoping that if she mapped out a plan, I'd eventually agree. I decided to respond in the same old-fashioned way, with a letter of my own. I kept it brief. I didn't argue or offer counseling. I simply said that I understood her perspective, but believed it was best for both of us to move on. Then, in her next letter, Emma said something that genuinely disturbed me. She mentioned driving by my apartment a few times and noticing I wasn't home. She didn't explain why she'd been driving by or what she intended to accomplish, but knowing she was monitoring my movements gave me chills. It was then that I realized it was time to close this chapter for good. I later learned from a friend that Emma had gone to my mom's house, trying to persuade her to convince me to take her back. I was livid. Not only was she overstepping her boundaries with me, but she was also involving my family, trying to manipulate them into helping her. Thankfully, my mom saw through it. She told Emma I'd made my decision and that she needed to respect it. Emma, apparently, became emotional and started crying, but my mom stood firm, doing what was right. Reflecting on everything that happened, I realized how much I'd learned. I discovered it's perfectly okay to stand firm in your boundaries, even if others resist. I understood that no one is owed unlimited chances, especially after betraying your trust. Most importantly, I learned that moving on isn't just about leaving. It's about safeguarding your peace and securing your future. And that's how I finally took control of my life.